Welcome everybody to our third and final webinar of this series for children's service leaders with Tribe at the United Synagogue, Tribe being the youth department of United Synagogue. Welcome to people who've joined us before, and also welcome to new people who are joining us for the first time. It's great to have you with us. I'm Sharon Nakar, Education Executive at Tribe, and I'm joined tonight by Rabbi Lister of Edgware United Synagogue, who will be talking to us about different learning styles in our children's services. Rabbi Lister will be putting this out as though we are teachers, which is fantastic because as soon as we get up and we start teaching anything, we become teachers. So he's talking to us as though we are those. During the webinar, Rabbi Lister will be opening the floor for your ideas and thoughts. So please send those through to us. If you've not joined us before, I'll tell you that your microphones have been muted to limit background noise. So the way that we ask you to join us and to give us your thoughts and ideas is using the Q&A feature. So on your screen, which you might need to move around a little bit, either with your mouse or your finger, there should be a Q&A button. If you click on that, and then click on Ask in the top right-hand corner, and then you type in what you want us to see and send it. You can remain anonymous by making sure that the anonymous button is selected green before you press send. It will only be myself and Rabbi Lister who'll be able to see any comments that you write anyway, and we will be checking throughout and we will respond to as many as we possibly can in the time that we have. We're aiming to finish this webinar no later than 8:45 this evening. So I'm now going to hand over to Rabbi Lister.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here and welcome everybody who's watching. I want to start off with a big thank you to anybody who ever has taken or will take a children's service. It's very important. The scholar and sage Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya is quoted in Pirkei Avot as saying that if somebody learns something as a child, it's as if there is writing there on new parchment, whereas if somebody learns something when they're older, it's like writing on parchment that's been rubbed out. So the writing that we put on these children's hearts and souls is pristine. It's there for life. It's extremely important. And anybody who helps with the children's service is making an indelible impression on a child's mind. So it's a great responsibility. It's also a tremendous opportunity to lay a foundation of wonderful memories about Judaism and Jewish education, Jewish learning for life for these children. And I thank you all and salute you all for all that you do for all our children in all our children's services. It is a tremendous thing. Before we even start a children's service, it's helpful to have the information out there that the children's service is taking place. It's worth ensuring that the system that you have in your shul ensures that people are aware that there's a children's service. It's something that we take for granted, but it's not always the case. So if you can keep an eye on that from time to time, just to ensure that the PR is out there, that the relevant parents and children are being reached by news about a children's service, that's a helpful thing to do. And it means that you'll maximize the take-up and the attendance at your children's services. You are putting in the effort, you might as well get the most bang you can for your buck by making sure the word is out there and the kids are coming along, hopefully with their parents as well. The teaching starts not only when we open our mouths, but even before that, when we just walk in the room, or when the children first set eyes on us and realize that we're going to be running the session. That is the moment when they start to learn. They can learn from how we are, not just how we teach them and what we do. So for instance, if they can see that you're pleased to be there, and that you're energized and excited to be with them, that communicates a mood about Judaism and about them that is important. If you dress nicely, then it shows that you take them and yourself and the occasion seriously. If you greet them nicely and speak to them in a nice way, that makes them feel valued, and it makes them think that you're a person who they can listen to because they're going to hear nice things from you. if you're enthusiastic and passionate about what you want to give over to them, they will pick that up and they will be excited as much as you are. If you look, God forbid, bored or slovenly and like you don't want to be there, then it will come across wrong. But I'm sure anybody who's taken the trouble to volunteer to lead a children's service already cares. And so, you know, it's a fantastic thing that you will do, and I'm sure you're all fantastic at this. We can also reinforce the children's attitude to their learning by showing respect for them, by congratulating them on coming, celebrating the fact that they're all there, and making them realize that this is something that we take seriously as adults, that we find that their being in shul is an important thing. That means that they will consider it as an important thing as well, and they'll be more likely to come back and to continue to learn. And you'll have opened their hearts and minds before you start communicating your message with all these subliminal messages that you can give out just through the words of introduction, how you look, how you communicate with them, make eye contact, and so on. I wonder if anybody's got any ideas at this point about further examples of dugma ishit, the personal example that we set.
Okay, so this is a bit where we're going to open the floor to you. So just like I said before, we're using the Q&A feature, finding Q&A and selecting ask in the top right hand corner. If you want to stay anonymous, that's fine. Just make sure it's selected green before you send. I'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, so Sarah says, making sure we smile, look happy.
That is important, yes. Yeah, smiling always helps.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can do that without taking time with actually explaining anything. So it needn't be a time-consuming thing, just a smile. As we enter the room, or as they enter the room, we can greet them with a big smile, for sure. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, moving swiftly on.
Hang on 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, so Daniel's saying as well, what about, rather than just person example, what about thinking about tefillah? And if you've got a siddur. So modelling how to use the siddur, I think is what Daniel's saying.
I think it depends, of course, on the age group of children that you have. If you've got very little children, they won't know what a siddur is, or they won't be able to hold it for a long time. But certainly, if we're looking at the older children, you know, let's say primary school age, then certainly we can show them that we are holding a siddur and that it is an important grown-up thing to do. When we tell them the page numbers, we don't just tell them a page, we actually show them the page so that they can see for themselves what the page looks like. So children who aren't yet comfortable with their numbers or haven't got the fine motor skills to actually turn the page will be able to spot what you're doing and find it easier to locate that, even if it is in an approximate way. And also we can treat our siddur with respect. We can look at it, we can read the words. When we shut it, we can kiss it, and we don't just chuck it on the floor. And all these things will model what a siddur is and how we take it seriously. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Daniel, for that. Okay, so moving on. I think it's important that we should be as ambitious as we can possibly be in our teaching. Not every child will understand everything, but let's remember the importance and the value of the encounter that we have with the children and pack as much into that. Make every minute count. And if we plan it carefully and expect as much as you can from the children, they will most probably rise to that occasion and get more out of the session. We also want to make sure that they gain from as many aspects of the session as possible at every point. So for instance, if they already know all the tefillot, we can add a new one, or we can look at one that they already know in a different way. We can give it a different tune. We could do it at a different speed. We could add new insights to it. If we're telling them a story or a mitzvah that they know, we should be particular to add something to that story or the compendium of rules about the mitzvah that they don't currently know. And that way we are not only reinforcing their learning, but actually moving them along in their learning and ensuring that this meeting of minds will be as productive as possible for them. And you never know, anything that we say could be the one thing that sticks with them throughout their lives. I still remember from my distant youth how there were certain little throwaway lines from people who taught me in children's services that still spring to mind now when I say certain prayers or think about certain things. So it's incredibly important that we use this time as well as we can and ensure that we pack in the learning as best we can at every moment in this time with them. In terms of what we teach them, it's also, to my mind, important that we model our approach to Torah by expecting a lot of it. The Torah should be taking us to places that we wouldn't go by ourselves. So if the takeaway message from a particular thing is the Torah telling us to be nice, or to be a good person, or to be grateful, or to be polite or pleasant, these are things that you don't need Torah for. A humanist could tell us that. It's a matter of social expedient. So I think it's important that we should try to use the Torah message that we're going to be handing over through our service, be it one they've learned before and we're enforcing, or be it something new. Let it be something that they won't pick up elsewhere on TV or online or in school. Let it be something that it is a new thing that advances them in their learning and their spiritual perception, to take them to a place they wouldn't get to by themselves. I'll give a little example of this, if I may, if time allows. Okay, just to give a little window into the depth that Torah takes us to. There's a famous line, "Va'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," which is translated, "You should love your neighbor as yourself." There is so much in these three words that it deserves a webinar in its own right. Just very briefly, the idea of va'ahavta, and you will love, is based on the root ahav, which actually means to give to others and to give to oneself, based on the Hebrew root hav, which means to give. So the point is that we should love others, conscious of the fact that by loving other people, by spreading that love, we love ourselves as well. By giving to others, that is actually a gift to ourselves. When we take from others, we deplete and diminish ourselves. When we give to them, we give to ourselves. The idea of le reacha, it doesn't say va'ahavta et reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, as it's commonly translated. It actually says va'ahavta le reacha, love that which pertains to your neighbor. So we don't actually have to like other people. What it means is we have to care for their interests. We care for their feelings, for their reputation, for their finances, for their property, for their mood, as we would for our own finances, reputation, feelings, mood, and so on. Kamocha, as yourself, implies as a given, it's implicit within that we like ourselves and that we give ourselves treats. If we find that we are not liking ourselves and not giving ourselves of our best attention, if we're constantly running ourselves down and trying to get away from ourselves and distracting ourselves with other people or icons of the celebrity world, something is not right. The Torah takes it as a given that we will care for ourselves and actually grow to like ourselves as well. All this is packed into just three words. And any line of Torah, any mitzvah, any story contains this sort of depth. And the more we challenge it and reflect on it, the more we will get out for ourselves and the more we can hand over to the children. Of course, there are depths that will be lost on the children when they're very little. But if we can at least be conscious of that and convey some part of those depths to them so that they're learning something from Torah that they would not learn in the street or online, then we're succeeding in using Torah as it ought to be used to move them on to a new place. In terms of the nuts and bolts of running a children's service, there are some simple tricks that I'm always keen on bringing in, which will help to enhance the experience for the children, maximize their enjoyment and also their learning, which always go hand in hand. One is that the whole experience should be moved along at a brisk pace. There should be something of a sense of urgency, in my opinion. So we say, all right, guys, let's settle down. There's lots to do today. We've got lots to get through. Time is not on our side. Let's keep this moving. And if the children are kind of trickling in and they're not all sitting down yet, just start anyway, so that those who come in will quieten down straight away because they see there's something going on. And those who are already there will feel that their time is being respected, because as soon as they sit down, you start. Furthermore, if they're sitting down and doing nothing, they'll feel bored. And there's nothing like boredom to sour the atmosphere in a classroom or any learning setting, including a children's service. So let's make sure that as soon as we got any number of customers there, any number of attendees there, let's get the show on the road, let's get the learning happening, and we'll kick it off in a positive way. Furthermore, I think that it helps everybody with the learning if the children's service leader is seen as a leader. We don't ask the children what to do. We tell them what we're going to do. We might ask them if we know the answer, but let's start off with a sense of control so that they feel that the person leading it knows what they're doing. They'll feel more comfortable that way because they know there is a firm hand on the tiller. We needn't be tyrannical. We didn't tell them off or be cruel, of course. But if we say, here's what we're going to do today, guys, we're going to do a bit of this and a bit of that, and then we're going to move on to something else. And that was a great fill out. Now let's move on to something else. The children will feel guided, they'll feel comfortable, and they'll feel able to join in.
Can I just throw in there? What Rabbi List is getting at there is that it's providing a structure. So the children know what's going to happen next. It's not saying to them, I'm in charge and I'm going to do everything and you're going to sit and listen the whole time necessarily. It's saying this is what's going to happen throughout our service, so the children know what to expect and they know sort of a sense of safety that the leader knows what's happening.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, it's an important point to bring in. And indeed, I'm going to come back later to this idea of the interactive capacity within a children's service, that we do, of course, want to get the children involved, but let's give them a steer at every stage so they understand what's going to happen next, that somebody's in control, and they interact with the leader within those parameters, and they'll do it better if they feel they're being comfortably led. Exactly. But thank you for making that clear. That's a very helpful thing. Another thing that we can sometimes bring into a children's service is silence. If we have them ready and listening and we just go quiet on them, they may well feel intrigued and curious about that. And we can draw their attention and create a sense of anticipation by going quiet. Not something that I'm personally very good at doing. I love to talk, but sometimes a moment of silence, maybe between sections of a children's service or at the very start. Now then, children, welcome everybody. It can just calm it down and get them focused on the person leading and bring a sense of anticipation and direction into it. You may recall from when you were in school that some teachers were better than others. And one of the aspects of education that I'm very passionate about is the fact that children learn in different ways. Being aware of this can enrich a learning experience immeasurably. And it's a simple trick that I want to share with you all. You can, in fact, discern it in the Torah. You look at the way mitzvot work. We can see those educationally as things that teach us particular messages. And you'll notice that a mitzvah is something which is impregnated, which is composed of many different learning styles. And I'll just throw a few out there so that you understand what I'm getting at. Children learn, for example, through seeing things, through hearing things, through wordplay, through an association with the natural world, through music, through rhythm, through movement, and so on. Some children like to be challenged with a personal goal. Some children like to do something along with other people. As we get older, we pick up more and more of these skills. And as we enter adulthood, we tend to have pretty much all of them at our disposal. But there'll always be some that will attract us more. And younger children, especially the primary school age, will probably only have 2 or 3 of these skills that will really attract their attention. So, for instance, if you want to talk about, I don't know, let's say you want to peel a fruit. I've got a fruit here. If you want to talk to children about peeling a fruit, there are different ways you can do this. One way is just to talk about peeling the fruit. Children who are auditory and linguistic will be engaged by that. But children who like to see things will not be engaged, will not be paying much attention, or they'll struggle to attend to a mere description of the peeling of a fruit. If, however, you show those children the fruit, they will be riveted on it because it's something that they can see, and that's how their minds work. There are other children who will work best through actually acting out the movement of peeling the fruit. And because they're children, they are wonderfully imaginative and they are biddable, and they will join in with you, and they will feel those peeling gestures even if they don't have the fruit in their hands. They will even feel the peel under their fingernails even if the fruit's not actually there, because their imagination is so strong. So you can say to them, I want everybody to hold your fruit, and they will all go like that, and they will, believe me, feel the roughness of that skin, that peel between their fingers. And if you say to them, now dig your fingernail into the tangerine, they will feel that, and they say, now peel it, they will feel that as well. So what you're doing is you're incorporating lots of learning experiences into the one action. For those who communicate best through language, they're hearing what you say. For those who do it through musicals or rhythmic things, they're hearing the emphasis that comes in your speech from time to time. For those of them who learn through moving themselves, they will be moving their fingers in time with you. For those of them who are interested in the natural world, they'll see the fruit there, and so on. And all these things will engage their attention, enrich your teaching, and enrich their learning. And this can be done with any learning experience. So for instance, if you're teaching them about a mitzvah or about a story, ensure that you bring in this sort of learning quality, that you're communicating with the children through all these different learning methods. Make sure that you've got speech, that you've got something visual, that you've got something that they can do, you've got something they can listen to, that may be musical. Give them a challenge to do it. Let them do it remind them they're doing it with other children. They're doing it as a group. And all these things, if you pack all these into one learning experience, well, you will have that group rocking. They'll be in the palm of your hand because you'll be reaching all those different minds simultaneously in a way that works best for them through one simple action. It's a mindset that can be learned. It's not something that comes naturally. But when you're thinking about your children's service, when you're planning it beforehand, if you can bear in mind that the children learn in different ways, and you can pack in as many of those learning experiences into what you're going to be doing with them, you will grip them all with that learning, and they'll have the best time, and so will you, because there's nothing like having a class in the palm of your hand to make your Shabbat morning go with a bang. Now, you'll notice that the prop I used to explain that point just now was a tangerine. This doesn't cost much. It's about 15-20p, and my budget stretches to that. And I would dissuade you from having anything in a children's service that costs a lot of money, or that is valuable, or that is difficult to have to hand. Because the children don't need to have an expensive or fragile or difficult to obtain prop. It can be any old thing that's lying about. It can even be something like a stick. If you hold up a stick and say, here is Moshe's stick, they will now understand that as Moshe's stick, and they will see it as such. If you hold that stick as a pencil and pretend to write with it, they will see it as a pencil, and so on. But the fact that you have a thing there and you interact with it with all the different ways, and you describe what you're doing, and you bring in a bit of rhythm to your voice, and you have them join along with the mind action, all these things will engage those children and bring them into your session, and you will be able to teach them in a beautiful way, and you'll be an amazing teacher, and you'll get kudos from them. Next time you're on in a children's service, they will want to be in your session, and as soon as they see you there, they will be hushed, because they'll know you're really good. You'll have street cred with them, and they will want to do what you say, and they'll want to listen to you, and it will improve your grip over the children no end, and you'll be able to do more exciting things with them once you've established yourself as a great children's service leader. And the things that you ask of them can be really simple. So for example, if you're teaching them about Jonah and the whale, you can have them be the sailors on the ship and get them all to rock from side to side and feel the motion of the ship. They can shield their heads from the splashing water. They can hold their tummies if they feel a bit seasick. They can be Yonah, and they can follow Yonah with the motion of their hands as he's thrown into the water. They can make the splashing sound as he hits the water. You guide them. Remember, you're leading them all the way. You guys say, come on, guys, I want you all to show Yonah going into the water. Now do that with you. You don't even need to tell them much about it. As they see you do it, as they see you modeling it, they will do it themselves. And they will be energized and gravitate towards you because of that wonderful learning example that you're showing them. As it happens, we're at the moment in Parashat Balak, and
next week
yes, it's Parashat Chukah. This week it's Balak. Next week, and Balak is a wonderful story about Bilam riding on his donkey. So we could talk about that. And for example, if you want to have them pretend to be riding on a donkey, just get them to hold imaginary reins and go like that. They'll all feel that donkey moving beneath them. If they're a little bit older and you feel like it, you can move to the back of the room and then have them turn around on their chairs. And they can all face the other way and have the chair, literally they'll be sitting on that thing as a donkey. They can hold the back of the chair as it's raised. If you want Parashat Chukah this week, you talk about Moshe hitting the rock. Again, you don't even need any prop at all. Just get them to hold that stick in their hands in an imaginary way. Tell them we're going to hit the rock twice like Moshe did. 1 and 2. And you'll get them in so many different ways, through the language, through the visual, through the exercise of actually moving their hands, through the counting of the blows, through the fact that Moshe thereby failed in a particular goal, and they'll feel the tragedy of him missing out on his life's destiny in a certain way because he made that little mistake. And if you want to talk about the fact that this had a vast impact on the entire Jewish people, that the link between them and the land of Israel was weakened because Moshe didn't go in there with them, and that meant that they could be exiled in the future. All these things will make an impact on them, and you'll be packing all the different learning experiences into one simple gesture. In a few moments of a children's service, you'll grab their attention by remembering all these different intelligences that the children have and bringing them all into your learning. It's a really easy, simple thing to do, and it will transform the learning of those children and make it memorable for them throughout their life. Mark my words. I wonder if we should open it to the floor at this point. Are there any props that anybody else has ideas about? I'd love to hear if anyone's got any ideas.
Okay, so we're opening again, asking you to use the Q&A feature and let us know any props that you bring into your children's services or could bring into your children's services to help tell that story in a visual way or a kinesthetic way. Kinesthetic meaning movement. Oh, I love this one. We've got Sarah again saying that she uses chairs with a gap in the middle and the children walk through to act out the splitting of the sea.
That's a fantastic thing to do. I really love that. Yeah, that's amazing. I heard a story about a great rabbi who once disappeared into his room upstairs in the yeshiva. And he was there for a long time, and the students were worried about what he was doing there. And they heard a tremendous crash and rushed upstairs to find out what it was, and found that he had stacked up a lot of chairs in 2 rows and brought them down behind himself so that he could have some notion of how it was to cross the Red Sea and then have the waters crash down behind them. So he actually did that, this great Torah scholar, so that he could experience the crossing the Red Sea in that way. So bully for Sarah.
Wow.
Yeah, she walks in illustrious footsteps with that comment. Thank you for that.
We've got somebody anonymous has said that for the Hanukkah story, what they do is they pretend that the whole room is like the Holy Temple, right? And they get the children to act out being the Maccabees, and they run around looking for a little pot of oil. Fantastic,
that's a super idea. And if you're so minded, you could have a little bottle that you plant in the room beforehand, before the kids are there. Or even if they are there, they might not notice it if you're a bit discreet, and then they can actually find the thing. Yeah. That'd be wonderful. Yeah, great stuff. Thank you. We've got some talent out there. Okay. There's a couple of other points that I wanted to bring in. In fact, one more point in particular, then I'm going to start wrapping up because time is not on our side. It's the idea of it's a long word for a simple idea, which is differentiation. And that means that we recognize that the children are different, not only in their learning style, but also in their learning ability. Different children will have different levels of attainment, sometimes because some are just cleverer than others, sometimes because some are younger than others and they're just not as developed. And, would that we could all have, a group full of children who are 4.5 or 6.5 in our children's services. Life ain't like that, and you might have a group of children, ranging from 3 to 8, and you've got to have something that reaches all of them, despite the fact that, as well as having different learning styles, they also have different learning abilities because they're different in age. And there are little tricks we can do to accommodate this as well, to ensure that all the children are benefiting as much as possible from the session. So for instance, you can start off with a simple fact, which will be reinforcement and revision for the older children and learning perhaps for the first time for the younger children. And then you can gradually move on to something that is a bit more complex and a bit more challenging, which the younger children might understand or might not, or they may grasp it in part. But for the older children, they will grasp it as something new. So again, you're using the time to ensure that all the children are learning as best as possible, and you're curbing for the differences in age. In addition to all of that, you might find that you can throw in little details along the way that some children will pick up on, some children won't pick up on. But because it is little details that you bring in, the children who miss it won't have lost much in terms of time, but the children who do grasp it will have a whole new world opened up for them through that little sentence that you throw in, that little detail to describe something. You also have to capitalize on the opportunity, if you have it, of reaching the parents. It's such a wonderful thing that we often get parents with our children, because the parents are also there to learn. They're not just there with their children. And occasionally you can find yourself communicating with the children on one level and the parents on an entirely different level. And we can have that learning objective not only for the children, but for the parents as well. And the parents can also feel that Torah has something for them, because Torah is there for all of us throughout our lives. Even if we're in advanced old age and we know a huge amount of Torah, there's always something new to learn. And we can reach the parents with a detail that might be lost on the children, but which the parents can pick up on. And we'll send them away with an idea. Maybe it's just a question to start them off on a train of thought that can niggle them next time they have an idle moment or a quiet time, and they can think back to the question that we raise or the detail that we throw in. And we can make sure that the parents are learning as well as the children, and ensure that this learning experience is as rich as possible for parents and children alike. And as we move towards the end of the children's service, there are other tricks that we can bring in. We can have a closing plenary so that the children revise what they've learned, they understand what the key points are, because we sum up what those key points are. And we embed the key learning points in their minds by reiterating them. It's like the Teletubbies trick, where in the Teletubbies, I don't know if it's still on, it used to be, but I'm not giving my age away too much. In Teletubbies, they used to show the videos twice, because children like to learn things a second time. When we have ads on the radio with a phone number, they always say the number twice or 3 times, because if we do it once, it goes, but a second time, they'll remember it. So we can recap the key learning objectives for this thing, and we will ensure that the children have those takeaway things reinforced and embedded in their minds. We can also quiz the children and say, okay, so what did you learn today? Who remembers? What was Bill I'm riding on? What is a whale? Was it a unicorn? Was it a camel? No, it was a, well done, it was a donkey. Fantastic. And that way, we will ensure that the children feel involved at this stage, as well as in the middle when they have their bodily kinesthetic activity or their singing activity along the way. And we can ensure that they are learning at this stage as well. And this can be a bit hard. We can find out through the answers how well we've led the session. And this can be a dispiriting moment. If you ask them a question and nobody knows the answer, that means that the message has not got across. It's not always the leader's fault. Sometimes the children just aren't focused. There may be other things going on that makes it hard for them to focus on. But if there is no communication from us to them, if we're not reaching them and not getting the salient points across, that means we need to rethink what's going on.
just a point there, it doesn't necessarily mean it's negative. It's a learning curve for us too. So if a child hasn't got something, or a whole group of children haven't got something, it's for us to think, why not? What did work, and what can I do better next time to make sure they do get it?
Absolutely. Even if they didn't get any of the learning that we intended them to get, the fact that they came to shul and the fact that they saw somebody who was nice and cared about them, those are precious learning experiences in their own right. If they had fun, that's even better. But we want to make sure that we get as much as we possibly can into the children's minds and hearts during this session. And we can up our game all the time by ensuring that we assess what the children have learned through a little quiz, or through throwaway comments that we might hear from them or from the parents while they're there or as they're leaving. And we can make sure that we refine and improve our learning style every time we're on, to make sure that we are getting the most as we can into them, and that way we'll get more pride out of what we're doing. But for sure, no children's service is ever a waste. It's always a good thing. We're always going to be benefiting the children, if only by the fact that they have a good time and see a smiling person there to greet them. If we can work out where the children are up to, where their learning is, we can bear that in mind for next time to build on it more effectively. If there's a rota of people taking the children's services, we can ensure that there's a handover to the next person. So, you know, they started this or that tefillah, they learned this or that song for the first time, they learned a bit about this or that mitzvah, this or that story. Would you mind reinforcing that with them and taking it on to the next stage with them? And that way, with this sort of joined up thinking between the different children's service leaders, we can ensure that the children's learning is as progressive and as joined up as possible. It's more coherent and it's better for them. And finally, as we go along through our children's service leadership, we discover what works best for us and what we enjoy doing and how we enjoy our teaching the best. And once we hit on our key teaching skill, be it eliciting responses from the children, be it entertaining them, be it like a ringmaster or a psychiatrist or whatever your particular teaching style is, once we got that style and we're developing it, it becomes more fun for us and it becomes more fun for them, because there's nothing like seeing somebody at the top of the game delivering to the best of their ability. And if we are energized and inspired by what we do, they will be inspired and energized by what we do as well. And we'll have fun. And there's no harm in that either. That's all I want to say.
All right, thank you, Rabbi Lister, for giving us so much to think about. And I just want to reiterate Rabbi Lister's comments at the beginning. Thank you to all of you for leading our children's services. You truly are so valuable in our communities. We really, 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 really appreciate having you do what you do. As always, if you haven't joined us before, what happens is you will receive an email tomorrow if you've logged in tonight live with a link to a survey. Please take a minute to complete that survey. It's really short and the feedback is really helpful. I will include on that email Rabbi Lister's notes from tonight's session. If you would like them separately, please email me with pleasure. You can do so through the Tribe website. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded as soon as possible. And if you haven't already, you can join our Facebook group, Children's Services Tribe, to find out what's going on in children's services and to network with other children's service leaders. And our Tribe Sparks are available on our website, which is behind me, www.tribeuk.com. This, as I said at the beginning of this session, is the third and final one of this series. Please look out, because we will be doing more of these and we will be in touch with you soon to let you know about them. Have a good night.